Greetings. I'm Naba Muhammad. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Final Call newspaper, and I'm also the host and creator of Straight Words with Naba Richard Muhammad, B.J. Murphy, and James J. Muhammad. We air live Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. to midnight on WVON AM 1690 Black Talk Radio Chicago. You can also get us via the iHeart Radio app and at WVON.com. Right now, I've got a special report for you regarding the trial of the Uhuru 3, and it's a pretty interesting case. So let's get right into it, and this is for straightwords.com. Federal flop. A case charging activists as Russian agents misses the mark. This is in our Not in the Mainstream News collection. A major federal case against activists that the government charged were recruited, funded, and directed to act as unregistered illegal agents of the Russian government to sow discord and spread pro-Russian propaganda has flopped. Yes, the case went south. Last year, the Justice Department charged Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party and Uhuru Movement, along with white allies, Penny Hess and Hess and Nevel, and there was another defendant, Augustus C. Romain Jr. of the Black Hammer Movement. The federal government charged all four with these serious accusations. But not one of the accused was convicted of 25 crimes related to sowing domestic dissension and trying to impact U.S. elections while under the direction and control of Russian handlers. The jury came back with a verdict on September 12th. Quote, "This is a very important case. You all aren't charged with sending some sensitive material to Russia. You all aren't charged with espionage," commented Leonard Goodman, who was a part of the legal team that represented defendants Yeshitela, Hess, and Nevel. They are known as the Uhuru 3. Mr. Romain Jr. of the Atlanta-based Black Hammer Movement mainly represented himself and had a court-appointed lawyer help with his closing arguments. Attorney Goodman spoke during a post-trial summation and discussion of the legal decision at Uhuru headquarters in St. Petersburg, Florida. The trial was held in federal court in Tampa Bay. Quote, "You all are charged with making speeches, and it's a very clean issue for the appellate court to sink its teeth in. And so I agree that this is an important precedent-setting case," said the attorney. Feds, high-profile, intimidating raid and charges. On April 18, 2023, a federal grand jury in Tampa returned an indictment charging 4 U.S. citizens and 3 Russian nationals with working for the Russian government and with the Russian Federal Security Service and a multi-year influence campaign in the U.S. This was the Justice Department announcement. Among the charges, quote, "Russian defendants recruited, funded, and directed U.S. political groups to act as unregistered illegal agents of the Russian government and sow discord and spread pro-Russian propaganda. The indicted intelligence officers in particular participated in covertly funding and directing candidates for local office within the United States," unquote. This is more from the federal government. Quote, "Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service allegedly weaponized our First Amendment rights. Freedoms Russia denies its own citizens to divide Americans and interfere in elections in the United States. said Assistant Attorney General Matthew G. Olson of the Justice Department's National Security Division. Today's announcement paints a harrowing picture of Russian government actions and the lengths to which the FSB will go to interfere with our elections, sow discord in our nation, and ultimately recruit U.S. citizens to their efforts, said Acting Director Kurt Ronow of the FBI's Counterintelligence Program. But here's a different voice. This is the first case I've ever seen where defendants are charged with a federal crime where all of the acts are either making a speech, doing a protest, publishing an article, or holding a rally, observed Attorney Goodman. The feds and local cops invaded the Uhuru Movement headquarters and homes in St. Louis and St. Petersburg, Florida, with heavy weapons, and the news and images of the raid broke into coverage by CNN and other news media in 2023. Was this a war on dissent? Defendants in the case have always declared their innocence and charged the U.S. government with cracking down on dissent and violating their rights to free speech. Chairman Yeshitela and his organization have a 50-year track record of fighting for Black people, criticizing the federal government's domestic and foreign policy, accusing America of genocide against Black people, and demanding reparations. Mr. Yeshitela is chairman of the African People's Socialist Party. Ms. Hess is chair of the African People's Solidarity Committee, which includes white and other members. Jesse Nevel is chair of the interracial Uhuru Solidarity Movement. He is also white and ran for mayor of Tampa in 2017. Prior to the verdict, longtime activist Zaki Baruti, who is based in St. Louis, traveled to Tampa for the trial, and he also has a long relationship with Chairman Yeshitela. He talked with me about the case and its importance. Mr. Baruti is President General of the Universal African Peoples Organization in St. Louis. The Uhuru Movement is part of a national grouping, the Black is Back Coalition, and Mr. Yeshitela is the chairperson, he said. We as a collective see this as a replay in terms of the charges against the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey when he was falsely charged by the United States government in the early 1920s with mail fraud, as well as the systematic attacks on the Black Panther Party, with numerous attacks upon their officers, as well as false charges against them, said Mr. Baruti. He continued, Dr. King was assassinated exactly 1 year from the date on April 4, 1967, when he criticized the United States foreign policy in Vietnam. 1 year later, on April 4, 1968, Dr. King was assassinated. The federal government does not want any effective Black people criticizing their foreign policy, Mr. Baruti observed. Quote, he said, the bottom line we see as an organization is that the charges against the three are based on their continuous criticism of the foreign policy of the United States as it relates to the Ukraine war and overall in terms of its colonialism and implementation of neocolonialism in countries in Africa. Mr. Baruti added, foreign policy has a direct impact on our community in a number of ways. One, you have millions of dollars, and not millions, billions of dollars being spent in wars that are many times unjust. We pay taxes to the government, and they use our money without our consent to do what they've been doing in terms of funding many of the wars that take place across this globe. It can lead to events like the recent Afghanistan disaster, the Iraq war, with a lot of trauma to families whose family members have to go fight these wars. FBI lies exposed and sentencing still to come. Now that the 4 defendants have been cleared of a major charge, comes a focus on their conviction. Their conviction is for conspiring to act as foreign agents. The charge is so rare, it's not included in federal sentencing guidelines, said defense attorney Montaki Akbar, who also represented the Uhuru Three. The trio could get anything from probation to 5 years incarceration, he explained. Next is sending letters to the judge overseeing the case to explain who these people are and what the party represents, Attorney Akbar added. No sentencing date has been set, and the Uhuru Three are out on bond. During the discussion, Ruth Perry of the Party for Socialism and Liberation said, "We know that they're trying to set precedents, and they're literally criminalizing community organizing in a way to intimidate people." Given that came out, where the FBI agent straight up admitted that they have zero evidence regarding election interference. Why you put it in the press release if you have no evidence, she asked. Is there grounds for a lawsuit for defamation or anything like that? I'm just kind of thinking ways that we can bring down to the people how the FBI lies on a regular basis, because this really proves it, she said. A black man spoke. This is what he had to say. I want to speak to the intimidation factor of what this trial was actually about. To intimidate the black community not to seek outside international assistance. That we have to fight within this shrinking civil rights box that we have no power in, he said. When we go outside of America and seek friends, we are going to be charged with some type of crime. So this case, this verdict is a victory. We can't be intimidated, and we are going to continue to seek foreign friends to help us push our issues forward. Chairman Yeshitela called the federal aids violent acts that terrorize black neighborhoods. They didn't have to use grenades, he said. And the whole community in St. Louis when they came. The St. Louis Police Department facilitated. They blocked off the street. They put tape over the doorbell video of the neighbor's porch. They used battering rams. Black people had to show ID to come there and to leave their houses. I mean, intimidation, said the 80-something-year-old leader. He also talked about how a church his group contracted with to house economic development programs was, quote, mysteriously burned. Then he said, what about a man pulling up in a car right outside this building here, goes into his trunk in broad daylight, takes out a military-grade flamethrower, and sets that flag there on fire? That was something like 27 days before they came together. So I'm convinced it was something like a dry run. I really am, said the chairman. What about the banks, he said. The banks we've done business with for more than 20 years shut us down and tried to make it impossible for us to have a place to secure the resources we need for community development projects. What are getting our financial fiscal sponsors information so we can remain transparent in terms of collecting money? What does that have to do with Russia, he asked. It's nonsense, he said. Mr. Akbar, the attorney for the Uhuru Three, said it was the chairman's compassion and passion that moved him. The black lawyer based in Tallahassee, Florida added, that's what I needed to see, because it was the passion that he had for this organization and what this organization means. And it was the reality that they were trying to take this away from us. They were trying to take away the ability for us to speak for ourselves, the ability for us to get in a van and go to Chicago, go to New York, go to D.C., go to Jackson, Mississippi, and speak about the genocide of black men and to speak about it and fight against it as one voice. I knew we couldn't walk out of here with the world thinking that we don't have a voice for ourselves, that we don't have the ability to speak for ourselves, that somebody else from Russia, wherever it is, Eurasia or wherever it is going to dictate and tell us what we can do, what we can think, and how we can fight in the midst of all that. It was no way that we could walk away with anybody thinking that. And that's what the fight was about. So I applaud you all too, because it meant a lot for that jury to look out and see that this is not three individuals fighting for their freedom, the attorney said to the Uhuru Three and their supporters. The jury was also all right. I thought it was important to start the conversation with Uhuru, he continued. We are not running from that. We are not running from a Swahili word. We are about freedom. We are not running from the work that we're doing. So we showed a video at the end of it. And we also not only showed the video from the end of it, we pointed out the fact that we build basketball courts in the middle of a neighborhood that has been dilapidated for years. When we talked about benign neglect, we talked about the doula workshops, we talked about the restaurants, we talked about the furniture stores, we talked about the gym. These are all projects and the work of the Uhuru Movement. He continued, we talked about giving food to people who can't afford to have food. We talked about all the work that we are doing, because this is what we do and nobody tells us to do it. We have the voice to say it on our own. So I leave you with the African proverb. And it says, when two elephants are fighting, the grass is the only thing that's damaged in the middle of it. The two elephants that are fighting are America and Russia, and they tried to make us the grass and damage us in the middle of the fight that they had going on. But like the grass that grows right here, the grass that grows wherever the African People's Socialist Party have shown up, you can't trample on. So even with this fight that we've been caught up in, we will continue to grow, and we will continue to win. So Uhuru means freedom. This is Naba Muhammad with a special report for straightwords.com, and we hope that you will go to our website for more content and then check out our weekly radio program on WBON AM 1690, iHeartRadio, and WBON.com. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned with us.